So let's jump in. Now, today we're really drilling into how to create positions, right? How to have a residency program. And you'll see in a minute, I use the How to Create Positions title intentionally. It's the only way to link two things. But anyway, how to create a program and what it's like to create a program and getting much more into the trenches of doing it, right? This is the Bible, okay? It's the source for all information, the ACGME website. It is not the easiest website to navigate. It is not the easiest website to find information on. But all things you need to know, almost, is here. Now, why I say almost is because there's an art and a science developing residency programs. The science is all in here. In fact, if you just follow the recipes, every standard for every program is in here. Just do what they say. The art is knowing all the things that aren't said in there. The art is knowing how to put it all together and make that magic happen. And unfortunately, when you've been through enough site visits, when you've had enough programs, when you've run a program long enough, you learn that the art really matters because as from a site visit perspective, they'll show up and they'll ask for something. I've had this happen many times and I sit there and go, that's not the standards, that's not the standards, they shouldn't be asking for that. But you know what, they're asking anyway. Okay, so I just have it ready now. Okay. Now, we're making positions, right? We're focusing on internships and residency. We're really not talking fellowship. Because for most, not all, you have to have these programs in place before you can launch a program like that. And that takes years. And you've got a 5-year cap. You can set up the program, the base foundational programs that you need to launch fellowships during that 5 years. You're doing really good. And as FQHCs, honestly, you're not going to be setting up an orthopedics program and subspecialties of orthopedics. You're not going to be setting up a cardiovascular surgery program. So we're talking bread and butter here of what we're looking at. You know, most of the time, as I shared with most of you, with you guys yesterday, we're looking at family medicine and medicine are the two with FQs they start the most. Psych is the third. Gosh, we need to set up more of those, right? Okay, so that's my 15-and-a-half-year-old daughter. Not a great picture of her, but as I shared with you guys yesterday, she's my Grey's Anatomy person, right? And everything matters or everything she knows is based on Grey's Anatomy. So this past summer, she decided that she was going to explain to me how physicians are created. So this is, how do I do this? Emily, how do I do this? The video? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Gotta get it louder. Okay. So this is how we create positions. You go to medical school, then you take an exam to become an intern, then you apply to different hospitals for your internship. Then once you are an intern for 1 year, you take your intern exam to become a resident. You're a resident for 5 years. You take your board, then you do your fellowship. You have to apply for fellowship. And then once you choose the fellowship, you have to do that for 2 years. This is after you've chosen your specialty. And then after 2 years of fellowship, then you become an attendee. And then later over time, you can be the head of your department, or you could apply to be chief of surgery. Okay?
I was just going to say, she basically prescribed life for trauma surgery.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So I
love this video in part because I'm her mom, but in part because it's like this is what Grey's Anatomy is teaching the world, right? This is what a 15-year-old thinks it takes to become a doctor. And she's got it all, well, part of it wrong, right? Part of it wrong. All right. This is also the kids, sorry, just to keep it light. Used to hold my hand all the time. Even at 11 years old, I'd be like, okay, this is, something's weird here. We're 11 and she's holding my hand. And then suddenly it turned to, I love you, sweetie. And her response is, of course you do. And after about a year of me going, right, which is of course I do, I realized this is her way of saying I love you too. Okay, so that's my, of course I do, kids. All right, so many physicians in the room, a lot of you guys already know this, but let's hit it. Get licensed before you're board certified, right? Board certification happens after you finish residency. The licensure happens during residency, and if you don't get licensed during residency by that time, your residency ends. It's over. Okay? And yes, we've had that happen. Mm-hmm.
Next year.
Absolutely.
That the full licensure won't be there for the class.
Right. Which creates a whole other set of issues that we're not going to dive into today.
That's what California. Yeah, in most states there are. California's 19, 20.
Whole other set of issues.
Applying for jobs, you're state, licensure after 36 months.
No, not after. 36 months of training.
Okay.
To 36 months.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internally.
Internally. Yeah. Yeah. But other than that, how do you do it, right? It also creates issues with precepting in the SQA, which really stinks. Anyway. This is the main one I want to address with you guys. Some of you may be thinking, okay, well, there's American Osteopathic Association residencies and their ACGME residency, right? Allopathic and osteopathic. No more. Okay? Back in 2015, they stopped, I think it was 2015, they stopped taking applications for osteopathic residency program. And now what we have is called the single accreditation system, where everybody goes through ACGME. Okay? If you know of an osteopathic program, it is transitioning or already has, hopefully it already has transitioned over to ACGME to meet those requirements. If they have not, at this point I'd say there's a good chance they're going to close. Okay? Okay, so we're only talking ACGME anymore in the ACGME standards, which are on that website. You heard us talk a little bit about this yesterday, simply because you can't talk residency without getting into some of this. Okay, got that. Okay. Residency programs are sponsored. You must have a sponsoring institution. And that's a different set of accreditation. Okay? That's the heavier lift. Residency programs and sponsors, as I said, are separately accredited by ACGME. And the accreditation requirements for a specialty are different by specialty. Okay, there are what we call the common requirements, and then there are their specialty requirements. Okay, so if you're looking at starting a residency and you happen to say, I'm going to sponsor it myself, you have to focus on what are the sponsoring institution requirements, what are the common requirements, and what are the specialty requirements. And believe it or not, there are applications for all three of them. We like applications. Okay? And you're going to hear Dr. Maria Carretos, and I never say her last name, I just call her Dr. Maria. She's from San Ysidro Health, and we just got them through, their sponsoring institution application. They were approved in October. We submitted their internal medicine application, which includes the common, and that site visit was in December. And so in April, we will hear if they will be accredited, which I know they will, but, okay, for an internal medicine program. So they've gone through the whole process, and they went through it very quickly, okay? You're going to see that I talk about a 2-year timeline, and that's only because Ivan's in the room, and academics get mad at me when I do it in a year. But it can take a minimum of a year or longer. Now, when we do it when we do this quick, you've got to have a compelling reason. The ultimate people are doing it very quickly. Okay? But the main thing I want you guys to hear about this, and I tell this to any client who says, can you get it done for me in a year? The main thing I want you to hear is at some point you have to pay the piper. Okay, you can't stand this thing up in a year and skip all this stuff. And all this stuff is relationships. It's kind of like the rising of the bread, right? Because throw all the ingredients in and get you to a bowl of ingredients that is bread. But to rise it up, that's what takes the time. So that's paying the piper. Right? And truly the academics get mad at me when right? I mean, Pat Daly has said to me a million times, how do you do this? Why do you do this? We talked about this yesterday, that the model of ownership has expanded from just straight medical schools or straight academic health centers, teaching health centers, and consortiums. Consortiums are harder to get accredited as a sponsoring institution, not because ACGME doesn't accredit consortiums, but because there's no infrastructure in there. If I start a nonprofit today, where am I getting accounting? Where am I getting personnel? Where am I getting the things that are really important to ACGME, like quality improvement and risk management and the ability to have systems in place so there's no route to retaliation for residents and all these other things that I need in order to get approval. Okay, these are the steps. That's not much, right? That's it. Now, there are a lot of sub-steps within this. But you start by identifying what we call a DIO, Designated Institutional Officer Official. I never remember which one it is. Doesn't matter. We all call them DIO. Who can tell me, okay, you physicians, you all did Latin. What's DIO? And you can't cheat. You can't tell them. What's DIO mean? What's Dio in Latin? Anybody know? God. Translates to God.
They get the complex.
No, they get the complex well before that. Particularly if they're surgeons. Hey, you! I'm just talking about you. This is Dr. I'm not going to butcher your last name. This is Dr. Maria. I'm not a PhD, not MD, right? But I would be the medical student you would not want, right? Except that I have mission, but I don't speak the language. I'm not from your area. Yeah, you wouldn't want me. Okay, so we start by identification of a DIO. We just had God walk into the presence of our room because Maria's a DIO. Okay. So you got it. Are you got it? He or she fills, files, and intends to apply. It's a one-page form. It's really simple. You know, anybody can do that one. But what that does is open up a web portal. It is the communication channel with ACGME, where all documents go. It's called WebAD or WebAD. You could just whatever. You develop a graduate medical education committee. This is the governance body of GME. And where the buck stops. Now, this gets a little weird. in non-academic organizations because we're smaller. And we think of the place of, well, wait a minute, no, the buck only stops with the board of the FQHC. And yet, GMAC and the DIO have every right to say stop and report to ACGME any issues. Okay, so for example, one of the roles of the GMAC is they must approve your program director. I'm not thinking of many programs that do that, okay, that have the GMAC approved before they've even made the hire, okay? It's like, oh yeah, we just hired somebody, I guess we'll bring that in front of the GMAC. Okay? That actually is not the way to do it, okay? It's not per standard. You have an incredible amount of policies and procedures to develop. Maria's shaking her head. This is another example, not Maria, but policy and procedure development is another example of where you have to stop and pay the piper. I can slam through policies for you to approve. But really understanding what it is you approved and how that takes form is something that takes longer, right? And so I'd rather have you have that richness of that understanding because you're owning what you're approving there. Okay? Now, there are policies having to do with everything from how are you recruiting, what are the requirements of the people you're recruiting, and that is where you put in what you expect out of these residents, how you're going to weight, what are you going to prioritize, to what are you doing in a disaster. And it's not what are we doing in a disaster because everybody needs to know that this is who's in charge or where they're supposed to show up. It's about how we protect the residents. When we're in the land of residency, everything's about academic integrity. Everything's about protecting the residents. Every decision we make is what is best for the residents. Okay, so when we talk about, and we got on this a little bit yesterday when we were talking about the 18-month termination language and what people do when they decide to close. The GMAC and the DIO immediately have to go to the place of, that's all fine, but how are we protecting the residents? What are we doing to ensure their training? But there is a policy on program closure. There are many policies that have to do not only with health insurance and benefits and things like that, but how do we protect against retaliation of the residents? What if they report that their preceptor isn't precepting accurately? How do we protect? There are policies having to do with well-being. And this is the big focus right now. That and patient safety of ACGME, well-being. Okay. So all of these get developed, approved, and when we do an application. And if you think that application is large, wait till you get to specialty. We submit the application, and then there's an institutional review committee meeting. Now that meeting happens technically 3 times a year, but one of those is the business meeting, so really only chance for approval is twice a year, October and January. You miss those deadlines, you may be waiting as much as a year to get approved. Okay? You cannot submit a specialty application until you are approved. Okay? But what we do is develop that specialty application while we're waiting for you to get approved, that once you're approved, if you've got all the pieces in place, you submit your specialty application. What do you need to submit a specialty application? An awful lot. But the main thing you need is a program director. Okay? Can't do it without a program director. Need a lot of other things too. But that program director is the one taking the lead on developing this application. I'm laughing. Your story. But, okay? So you write that application, you submit that application. It's a huge document. You make sure everything ticks and ties because you're getting to a level of granularity in this application that crosses, information will cross between that application, the common application, and what you said however many months or years ago on your institutional application. And if you have somebody else sponsoring it, they better be making sure it all ticks and ties. Okay? You submit it, you have a site visit. Right now the site visits are running 2 months after submission. That's not much time. Now, this is where it gets really crazy, particularly if you're working with me, because I'm going to want to make sure that everything ticks and ties. I'm going to want to make sure that we've gone through every standard and looked at how you can prove it, how you can prove you're meeting it. And it's a great opportunity to educate everybody about the standards, because we're going standard by standard. Family medicine has over 400 standards. So we'll have to go through and say, okay, how are you meeting that? Okay. We're doing mock site visits. We're talking about everything from what are you wearing to what, as a faculty, are you saying when asked how the derm rotation is happening. We're doing faculty development. Okay. So you have your site visit, and then you wait for your residency review committee meeting, which again, vary depending on specialty. But in general, broadly speaking, October, January, April, broadly speaking. Now, if you get approved in April, you have a choice, crazy as it may be. You can jump into getting residents outside the match for a July 1 class. Or you can take time, recruit over the summer, and enter the process the way most people enter the process, which is starting your interview in October. You're not allowed to advertise for your residency program until you are approved. It's a big no-no. Big, big, big no-no. You then start your program, and what do you know? You have another site visit. And this is for your sponsoring institution. Okay. That site visit happens 1 to 2 years after your sponsoring institution accreditation. You'll know roughly when it is because it will be posted on web ads. SI site visit, whatever date. Okay. That's another high prep time. Okay? Huh? The issues with reschedule, I can't hear you. You know? Go ahead. Go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, so the site visit, when they give you the dates, it's not really subject to negotiation for the most part. You know, if there's like some significant extenuating circumstance, you might be able to schedule it one. So they're usually pretty stickler about this is your date, kind of be ready. And it may be, you know, with maybe 60 days notice.
Yeah. On your sponsoring institution site visit, I had one client who got 2 weeks notice. This is for brand new program. The program hadn't even started yet, and that's another thing is you have to anticipate possibly having your sponsoring institution site visit before your program is even started. That's crazy. Okay. That same program had one of their key faculty members, the hospital-sponsored program that was based, the continuity clinic was an F2HC, and the medical director and faculty member at the FQ was going to be in Japan that day. That dear man got up at 2 in the morning, Japan time, put himself in a suit, and teleconferenced in. That's commitment. Now, not all site visitors will allow that to happen. Some site visitors say, nope, if you're not here, you're not here. Depends on the site visitor. Every site visitor has a different way of managing things. And this is a digression, and they all have different food expectations. I had one site visitor who only wanted coffee and potato chips. We're starting at 7:30 in the morning and going till 1, and you want coffee and potato chips. this is a rough timeline. It's a rough timeline. But it basically describes all of the things I just walked you through. And this is a 2-year timeline. There's in here that others will talk about, I'm sure. Program audit agreement we talked a little bit about yesterday. But developing evaluations, so much to be done. Yeah.
This is the same for a whole bunch of residents who will have a community clinic, the same process.
The process will happen is your level of involvement will be different depending on what model you pick. And I will argue for you that if you pick the continuity model, you still better be involved in some of these things. And if you're not a partner. Okay. The goals and objectives of the continuity clinic experience, those can be written without you very easily. Attached to the program letter of agreement, listing you as the site director. Here, sign this because we need to put in our application. And you're going to go, whoa, was I involved in that discussion? Now, I can tell you that you being involved in that discussion is far from the norm. That doesn't mean you don't ask for it. Okay, they're not required to give it to you because, again, they're the sponsoring institution. They have complete authority over that curriculum. They can change it at any time with dialogue with, depending on the nature of it, with ACGME, which is why I always argue get the control. You have full control. You have a model that's not, and you have a model that is.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, they've got both models going. You're more complicated in some ways. You'll get to this, I'm sure. Okay, so that's it for me for the moment on timeline. But let's